Composition is arguably the most important part of an image. You can have the best camera and all the technical skills in the world, but if your composition isn't quite right, your image will always fall short. An eye for composition can be hard to acquire though. So in today's video, I'm going to showcase 3 ways to improve this aspect of your photography with practical real-world examples. This video will reframe your approach, so next time you are out with your camera, you can achieve clean, minimal, and striking images no matter where you are or what you're shooting. A busy street scene can offer you the opportunity to capture an exciting and energetic composition, and that is great. But when it comes to the minimalist photography approach, it's all about less is more. When we are at a loss with our compositions or our confidence, we can tend to include more things in the frame. But so often, the striking, memorable images are made up of just a few elements. Looking over my own work and others who I admire, I noticed that often there is a maximum of 3, maybe 4 elements at play working together to enhance the composition and create a pleasing balance. I find that restricting yourself and only including 3 to 4 elements works because there is an imbalance which creates balance. It allows you to place something in the foreground or the corner and have one element be a little surprise that keeps the viewer engaged. I think the reason that we find these images so pleasing and almost calming is because of their orderly nature. Our mind is able to process the information and what is going on in the image very easily. Therefore, we want to keep looking at it. Think about spaces that we like to be in as human beings. Hotel lobbies and rooms, gallery spaces, concept stores. These are all spaces that are highly curated and often neat and tidy, quite minimal, but still very interesting and appealing to the eye. I think a minimalist composition that is stripped back is achieving this same emotion in the viewer. Obviously, composition comes down to personal taste and preference, but I think everyone can appreciate some of these minimalist compositions. Let me show you out in the field what I mean by just focusing on 3 to 4 elements max in your photos. Come over here, we'll talk about this blue sign because it's a good example of like color and texture. So this blue is really great. I'm always on the lookout for color, and we've got like the side of the sign and then the texture of the pebbles at the bottom. So I'm going to get kind of closer in, and we've got 3 elements with the gravelly textured ground, the blue sign, and then the shadow. I would class that as like a 3rd sort of element, and you could come back and get that shadow in more. I think that's a really good example of like being somewhere that's, I don't know, like this isn't the most amazing photography location. Everyone can find stuff like this no matter where they are. And these are actually the things that I'm seeking out. I know that that's not everybody's style, but you can still implement these tactics, maximum of 3 elements and seeking out little bits of color, texture. And once you start noticing them, you'll just be amazed because you'll see them everywhere and you'll be like, you know, having coffee with a friend or something and see something and you'll just like develop this like hawk eye for that stuff. Even if it's something that you just practice and then you can take it into like your landscape photography or your portrait photography or, you know, whatever it is that you do genre wise. I'm not trying to push everyone into this like minimalist look or anything. Even with this beautiful Birds of Paradise that seems to be featuring a lot on the channel lately, I have, you know, spotted it, and a lot of the time when we're shooting nature, things can get quite sort of like messy where there's a lot of elements going on, and you know that can be fine, but in the spirit of keeping our compositions like simple and clean and striking, I'm looking to see with my zoom lens if I can isolate the Birds of Paradise but still get that grid that's in the back there, which kind of brings like a more urban element I guess to it, so it's sort of juxtaposed. And I find minimalist compositions and that kind of style, that mundane photography, there can be a lot of that going on where things are juxtaposed or there's a little bit of like humor even in the image. I find like practicing composition can be really, like if you have a zoom, it's really good. I've managed to get in nice and close and show the Birds of Paradise against that and like isolate all of, like get rid of all of the other elements in the frame. And I just think it just makes for like a more powerful image, one that people can kind of like spend more time with, as opposed to being confused by including like all of this
but then that's there as well. It's like, what are you actually wanting people to look at and focus on?
So next time you're out, see if you can strip things back a little bit and really embody this less is more rule. It doesn't always have to be 3 or 4. If it works, but think about what you don't include and try and clean up your compositions a little bit just to see where it takes you. Sometimes we find ourselves in places with our cameras that are just not very inspiring or interesting. They don't offer up a lot in terms of subject matter and seemingly composition. A great way to combat this is to be on the lookout for texture. We see great examples of texture in black and white work, and I think that's because there is so much more room to focus on something like that because the subject matter might be taking a back seat. I think that texture is wildly overlooked when it comes to color photography. It really doesn't matter what you are shooting, color, black and white, if you're a landscape photographer, a portrait photographer, whoever you are, everybody can embrace and appreciate texture and use it to their advantage. The tips I'm offering up in today's video can all be layered and used together. I'm going to show you me out in the field looking around for texture in what would look like kind of just a very simple everyday situation.
I've just walked over here because I've seen the yellow lines, which I love to use as a compositional element. And then again, I've got these like built-in lines here, which are always great for compositions. And I noticed there's a cable tie attached to one of the grids, which makes me really excited. It's just another shape to include. And when you do the 3 elements, you've got like the yellow and then these grids here, and then the cable tie just adds like a little interesting piece of detail, and that another element that I think just sort of keeps the viewer interested. And then I'm really glad I came over here because there's also some paver tiles here that have broken off. So we've got lots of texture happening, layers, and yeah, just another interesting little detail that we've found in the world. And like this stuff genuinely makes me like so excited to be alive and like walk around with my camera. You're getting a lot of layering there with the textures too, which I think gives like depth to an image. So if you are someone who likes bokeh, the minimalist look can be hard because it is quite sort of graphic and flat a lot of the time, which I like, but to bring a little bit more life to it, I think texture is really great, where you've got that feeling where you kind of want to touch the image and it becomes more like a painting, when you see paintings and you can see that the paint's kind of like glooped up and it's got that texture, and that's what makes it more interesting to look at. We can still do that in photography with this technique.
I myself am often on the lookout for color, but I like to add to that and take it further by also looking out for texture. And I think if you pair those 2 things with the 3 to 4 elements, keeping things nice and simple, you will easily be able to achieve a striking and pleasing composition no matter where you find yourself with your camera. It's important to mention here that we do still need to show restraint, because the more things we add or we focus on, the messier our composition can become. We don't want to clutter the image with too much texture, but the addition of a rough surface or something crumpled can just take it to that next level. I have another composition technique to suggest, but before I do that, I want to let all of you creative professionals out there know about Acuity scheduling. If you are still going back and forth via email trying to pencil things in, then you need a booking system that frees up your time. I simply send a link to my booking page, which I can customize to fit my brand colors and font, and then Acuity scheduling takes care of the intake form, confirmation emails, reminders, and even payments too. It links up with all the popular payment services like Stripe, PayPal, and Square. As some of you may know, I also host my portfolio reviews through Acuity scheduling, and it makes the service so seamless for me and my clients. I love the way it integrates beautifully with my Squarespace website too, and gives me that professional touch. If you want to learn more or give it a go for yourself, you can head to acuityscheduling.com/Lucy Lumen for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the code LucyLumen20 to save 20% off your first Acuity scheduling subscription. Negative space feels like a really obvious composition tip, and it's obviously not a new one. I did not invent it, but it is one that I struggle with personally, despite it being such an obvious one and kind of one that seems really simple to execute. When we think of minimalist compositions, negative space definitely comes to mind, and I found lots of examples when I was researching it. As I said earlier in the video, it's often about what we don't include in a photo that makes it so powerful, and negative space is a prime example of this. Giving the image room to breathe and allowing what is there to shine and take center stage is what negative space is all about. It can also be used as a way to show scale, such as a person dwarfed by their position and size in the frame, or to leave mystery in an image even.
I am going to attempt to give you some examples of negative space. I was looking at my own work and I don't necessarily use negative space a lot, I don't think, but I will have shown you some really great examples. I'll just run through because I do think there's a little bit of kind of like this fallacy that it's like really easy, like, oh, negative space, everyone understands that, everybody can use it, you're just sort of leaving room. But I do think there's a lot more to it than that. And because it's so simple, I think we can get it wrong quite easily and then the balance is sort of off. So I'll attempt to get it right, but also show you just what I get so you can see examples of negative space being used maybe in hopefully a really good way, and then ways where it's like maybe not working as well.
It's often the things that are really subtle in art and visuals that are so hard to get right. My examples are definitely not the best, but I have collected a few more here that I think are just expert and just so powerful in their use of negative space. Personally, it is something that I am working on in my photography. I hope that these composition tips and seeing me out in the field, as well as these examples, have helped you to give you new ideas of how to compose when you are out with your camera next. For me, composition is more important than subject or lighting. It is my first port of call. It is the thing that brings all of my images together. I'm by no means an expert, but I am very passionate about composition and always willing to share what I've learned or how I compose and see things. So check out this video here if you want more tips and advice on composition, and let me know below if you have any for me too.